Hey folks, I'm John Cantera, the Double Broker Bounty Hunter, and today we're going to be talking about identity theft when it comes to carrier authorities. This is a fairly new phenomenon. In the last year, we've been seeing this happen, and what most people don't know is how to address the issue when it happens. So, this particular video is going to talk about how it happens, what to look for, what the warning signs are, what you should be looking at when you get contact change emails and things like that to help demonstrate where these impacts are coming in and hurting carriers, brokers, and even shippers. So at the very end, there is a special treat. You have the Double Broker Bounty Hunter playbook on how to resolve MC theft issues. I'll run through it step by step, everything you need to do if your authority is ever stolen. That way you can help safeguard yourself for the future and minimize the damage done to your reputation. So with that being said, let's go ahead and roll through it. And basically, you're looking at anyone obtaining information to impersonate a carrier or a broker. And that's really what happens here. These scammers know that it costs money to get their own authorities. And in the old days of double brokering, old days being start of 2023, in the old days of double brokering, the scammers would have their own carrier authority that they booked loads off of, legitimate authority, by the way, and they would have a legitimate broker authority that they would turn around and rebroker those loads with. That's all well and good. They're easy to spot. You can catch them, you can report them, you can get them shut down. And more importantly, it's expensive. There's a cost associated with developing that scam because it costs money to get an authority, both for a carrier and for a broker. Well, as 2023 progressed, it was less money in double brokering. So instead of creating their own authorities, now they're stealing authorities. And since they're so sophisticated at doing it, oh boy, they're doing a lot of damage in the process. Okay, so in order to really impersonate a carrier, they basically go and get their hands on the DOT PIN number of the carrier and then change all the safer information to deny the broker or the carrier's own access to manage their info. And this is really important because if your contact info for your authority is changed in safer and a broker is just trying to call and verify whether or not you're actually trying to book a load, they're not going to call you. They're going to call the scammer because the scammer's phone number is what's sitting in safer. So it's really important to pay close attention to your safer information. We'll talk more about that as we go through the presentation. So when it comes to impersonation, for carriers, these scammers can go and they can get their hands on all your stuff. They get their hands on your authority certificate. They get their hands on your COI. They get their hands on the W-9, especially if through impersonation, they're able to get into RMIS, My Carrier packets, or any of that. They're clearinghouses that hold all your information and distribute that information to member brokers. So if they're able to get into that, they can get access to your information. And with that information, you can book loads like crazy. For brokers, it's the same type thing, but really the hardest part for you guys is if a copy of your rate confirmation is distributed. Now, rate confirmations go out to hundreds of carriers every single day for every single broker. So, that format's always out there. All they need to do is get their hands on one copy of your rate confirmation and then use Photoshop and change some of the details, whether it's the delivery address or the load ID number or the contact info for the brokerage, whatever. They go in there and they change information so that they can go ahead and take control of the load. And in doing that, you, the real broker, have no idea it's going on. So when the carrier completes the load and comes to you to get paid, we have no idea what you're talking about. We have no idea what this load number is. We don't even have that lane. That's not even our customer. What are you talking about? And boy, carriers, you get frustrated as hell over that stuff. It happens. We'll talk about how to defend from that in a little bit. Oh, and yes, this is a new one. Shippers are being impersonated too. So brokers, you got to watch out for this. Just because, and I know I'm kind of being facetious here. You know, if you're a small broker and Walmart calls you out of the blue and says, "We want to work with you," boy, you're going to jump up and down. Holy cow! I hooked a big fish. Now I can make a lot of money off of this. Hey, this is great. Oh, you need net 30-day terms? No problem. You need net 60-day terms? No problem. Yeah, we'll take care of you. Sure, no problem. Make sure you call Walmart and verify the individual you're speaking to. You want to make sure that they actually have the authority to speak on that shipper's behalf and can actually commit funds for these loads. Vet your customers. And if a customer is offended because you're trying to vet them, they're not worth working with. Okay? So basically, the way this impersonation works, they're trying to deny access to the authority. The scammer seeks out specific qualifications for an authority within Safer. And that's because all the brokers out there have new requirements. In the last 2 years, brokers have gone from, oh, you need to have a minimum of 2 weeks of authority or 30 days of authority or even 3 months of authority, now to you need a minimum of 6 months authority or a year authority. And the reason why they do that is because, as I said before, about the olden days of double brokers, they had their own authorities, but they're all really new and they don't last more than a year because they'll never make it to the audit in order for DOT to complete their new entrant process with them. So they'll get shut down within a year. Anyway, with that being said, that's why you see a lot of brokers today requiring 6 months, a year, etc. For that. Now, because these restrictions are too much for your average double broker to absorb, now they're going to start stealing real carriers' authorities. So here's how they do it. They create fake email addresses that are very similar to the email address posted for the carrier. Most newer carriers out there operate using a Gmail, Yahoo, or some other public domain email address. Not that there's anything wrong with it, but if your email address is companyname@gmail.com, then the scammer may create an email address that says companyname.dispatch@gmail.com. Makes it seem like all you're doing is creating multiple email addresses for your growing company. No problems there. That happens a lot. But if the scammer creates that, then they go and they get their hands on your DOT PIN number. And here's the rub, folks. DOT back in March of 2023 had a data breach. In that data breach, DOT admitted to the compromise of employee data. Now, that's not entirely what happened. They also compromised DOT PIN numbers. So DOT PIN numbers are currently available on the dark web. Since that's the case, once these scammers identify a target authority, they create an email address that's very similar to the real email address for that authority. Then they go and they get their hands on the DOT PIN number. With that, they file a new MCS 150 in Safer. Once that's done, they change the email address and the phone number on the listing in Safer so that when the broker calls, hey, are you really trying to book this load? The scammer's like, of course we're trying to book the load. Thank you very much for calling and double checking. When the real carrier has absolutely no clue what is going on. So this is a very serious problem out there. And your MCS 150, that date is so critical for a lot of brokers as they're screening carriers these days. Some of the warning signs. If a broker is being impersonated, some of the things you need to look for, carriers, is you need to look for the email domain on the rate confirmation. For example, Varstar Alliance, popular broker, varstaralliance.com is the domain for their email. Well, if you see the broker's email address domain is actually varstaralliancellc.net, there's a problem. Some of the ways to verify whether or not an email address domain is correct is that most brokers have websites. Type that into the web and see if a website pops up. That's usually a good way to check. Most scammers still use, like a lot of carriers, Gmail, Yahoo, or some other public domain email address. Most brokers out there do not. Most brokers have their own domain. They have websites, they have all that stuff. So if you see a broker that has a Gmail email address, vet them carefully. Not saying that they're no good. I'm not saying that they're not legitimate, but vet them. Make sure you've double checked. Rate confirmations having multiple fonts. Again, this goes back to photoshopping broker rate confirmations. It may not be that the broker, or the scammer rather, is able to perfectly copy the broker's font choice on the paperwork. So if it doesn't line up right, or the font's a little too big, a little too small, maybe it's bold, maybe it's not, maybe it's just a hair off. But the human eye will see that something is not quite right. Even if you're not sure what's not right about it, you will see that it's not quite right. And if there is any question it, vet it, make sure you're doing the right thing. Same thing with spelling errors. Most brokers are very professional and they run spell checks and everything, and they make sure that the street names are right on the rate confirmation, city names are right, et cetera, et cetera. A simple spelling error doesn't happen very often on a rate confirmation. So if you see spelling errors on there, it's a possible sign. You want to double check and make sure the load is legitimate. Blind shipments are also a potential issue. Not saying that they are. There are brokers out there who utilize blind shipments to do shipment consolidations, which is perfectly legal. But when anytime a broker tells you to throw out the BOL you get from the shipper and use this BOL instead, and it goes to a different address, you want to make sure you're on your toes. In fact, I still keep the old BOL just in case. I've had a couple cargo theft cases where having that old BOL saved my butt. Okay, so now on the carrier side, carrier impersonation is a little easier to detect, but it depends on how sophisticated these guys are being. Again, email domain doesn't match the carrier website. A lot of carriers don't have websites. A lot of carriers are still using Gmail and Yahoo. That's okay, but carriers, please consider getting yourself a proper domain name for your company. It will help protect you from these issues. Recently updated MCS 150 date and safer. It takes usually 24 hours for safer to update. Once safer updates, that scammer has control of your authority until it's changed again. So pay attention to your MCS 150 date. If you go and you screen your MCS or your safer listing on a weekly basis like you're supposed to, you'll catch that MCS 150 was changed. It means some part of information that DOT has about you has changed. If you see that, you need to question it right away if you didn't submit it. So please keep that in mind. In fact, as a dispatcher, I check my carrier's safer information daily to make sure that nothing's changed. If you get an email from RMIS identifying contact change information, that is a huge issue. As a dispatcher, if I get a change notification from RMIS and the dispatcher information was changed, one of two things just happened. One, I was either fired and my customer didn't bother to tell me, or two, the authority was stolen and they're trying to write everybody out of it so they can make sure they have solid control of the authority. Do not ignore these RMIS emails. So to illustrate this point, this is a screenshot of a change alert I got for Govinord Premium Holdings. I was their dispatcher, and thank you very much, Adni Vinord, for allowing me to use this information in this video. Adni Vinord is the owner. Herv Davenport is the operations manager. Adni owns multiple businesses, so he usually doesn't deal with the minutia of the trucking side of the business. It's got me as the dispatcher. And you can see here when someone went and filled out a setup package for Sarisa Freight Solutions back in June of 2023, they changed the corporate information, they changed the sales information, they changed the dispatch info, and they changed accounts payable. And look at that email address they used, govinordholdings@gmail.com. If you look under the old contact for sales, Herv Davenport's email address was govinordpremiumholdings@gmail.com. That is the actual company's email address. So when they changed all this information, I got an email as a courtesy that the information was changed. That way, if it's an error, I can contact Sarisa or I can contact RMIS. And you better believe I called them the instant I saw that email because I knew it was wrong. These people do some shady stuff. So don't ignore those RMIS change alert emails, dispatchers. You need to see that when they pop. Here's another one to watch for, and this is a snippet off of Safer. Most of you will recognize this upper left-hand corner of someone's Safer listing. I blacked out the stuff that didn't need to be there, but the phone number in this particular listing was changed. It wasn't that phone number. In fact, it was a completely different area code in the past. And I got involved with this particular case on the 16th of November. The MCS date was the 6th of November. So clearly it was only recently changed. And when I was speaking to the owner for the carrier company, they said, no, we have not changed any information in Safer in the last year. I was like, well, someone did in the last 10 days. And these guys had to run my playbook in order to try to get everything cleaned up and minimize the damage to their business. So some of the impacts you see from authority theft. You have massive numbers of loads that will end up getting booked off of the carrier authority. I showed you Govinord's information. We caught that as it happened, and it takes 24 hours for an update in Safer to go into effect. We caught it about approximately 12 hours after Safer was updated. In those 12 hours, between then and when I was in touch with RMIS and MCP and Highway, there were 22 loads that were booked under Govinord Premium Holdings. 22, all of them fraudulent. By being vigilant in how you manage your own reputation and you catching this as early as possible, you can stop these scam loads from moving forward. We were able to intercept 15 of the 22 loads before they loaded out. Therefore, the scammer got cut off on 15 of those loads. The other 7 were already picked up. However, the receiver knew that they were coming and was able to identify the real carrier for us on those loads. So again, the scammer lost on those and did not get paid. Only the real carrier did. So we got very lucky at Govinord that we didn't have somebody successfully double broker the load. We didn't get a freight guard for double brokering or anything of that nature. And we were able to salvage the situation and make a lot of brokers very happy because of our diligence. But seriously, guys, when this stuff happens, freight guards are the first thing you get. Anytime you double broker a load or you're accused of double brokering because somebody stole your authority and did it, you're going to get a freight guard put on you. And it's very hard to fight freight guards like that. Even if you can prove that your authority has been stolen, it is very hard to prove. Yes, we can help you with those situations if they come up, but you don't want to come to me about an identity theft freight guard. You're going to get a copy of my playbook when that happens. Sometimes you can get contacted by law enforcement investigating stolen cargo. It's never nice talking to law enforcement when they're trying to get into your business, but if they suspect you of stealing cargo, that becomes a lot of fun too. So let's go ahead and get into the recovery playbook. If your authority gets stolen, these are the steps you need to take in order to salvage what you can of your relationships and start building it back up again. Okay. First things first, you need to file a new MCS 150 right the hell away. Okay. Remember, it takes 24 hours for these things to update. So you want to make sure you get the corrected information in, get the correct phone number, correct email address, all that stuff back in there so that the scammer cannot impact you any longer. Okay. So you on the screen here, let me go ahead and blow this up for everybody. These are the actual steps that you need to take. There's the link that you need to go to in Safer. The steps, select the existing registration updates, run right on through the line. So this is a recording. So please pause this, play it back, print it, do whatever you need to do so that you have this information. And you're going to do this off of your old PIN number. Okay, and that's okay. But after you do this, this goes to the next step. Change your DOT PIN number. Now, it used to be that you could do this by email. You can't do it by email anymore. And folks, you can thank me for that because I'm the one that brought it to DOT's attention that this stuff was happening. So after I alerted them about the Gova Nord case, that's when they stopped allowing PIN requests by email. So now your PIN is going to be mailed to you by snail mail, and it takes usually 5 to 10 business days. Watch Safer through this time period to make sure that the scammer doesn't go in and try to change your information again. Okay. But once you have that new PIN, then you know that your listing will be secure. Don't wait for the new PIN to move on to the steps, though. Step 3, call all the data clearinghouses for carrier information. That's your highway. That's Assure Assist, which is MCP or My Carrier Packets, RMIS. Call them on the phone. I've got the phone numbers on the screen here. Talk to a human being. Do not leave a message. Do not sit there and say, well, if you want us to call you back, hit 1. Don't stay on the phone. This is too important. Okay. Even if that means you're on hold all freaking day, it's important. Do it. You need to speak to someone specifically who can look at your account and know that they are actually engaged in trying to identify or flag your account as having your identity stolen. They'll also be able to tell you who the heck has requested setup packages from you. And that's one of the questions you need to ask. Can you make a note on our authority to indicate that additional verification is required due to ID theft? Next question. What brokers have requested setups since whatever the date of the theft was? And use the MCS ID date or the MCS 150 date to help you with that. And then make a note of all the brokers that the rep for RMIS or Highway tell you have requested packages. Make a note of that because you need to talk to every single one of those brokers. And that goes to step 4. Call all the brokers. Anyone that has had any contact through any of the setup platforms, you need to call them right away because the sooner you call them, you may actually be able to stop the load from actually going out. Tell them what's going on and when it started. That way they can check their own records to see the last few times that your MC has been used to know whether one is a scam and one is not. They can immediately alert their own accounting departments to put holds on payments on specific loads so that the scammer doesn't get paid on those loads. Ask them how many loads were booked. That's an important number to know. Follow up later and learn the results of those compromised loads. A broker is going to take a great deal of appreciation toward a carrier because a carrier is trying to resolve a situation in a proper way. If they don't give you any of the results, how do you know that the load was stopped? How do you know that the cargo isn't actually stolen and you're about to get blamed for it? Make sure you stay in touch with the brokers until the loads are fully resolved. Step 5, you want a fraud alert out there on social media and any internet sources that you have access to. Okay, take a look at the hundreds of trucker groups that exist on Facebook. By all means, get your MC out there, front and center. Say, this is my MC. It has been stolen. If you've booked a load with this MC, it's not valid. Please get a hold of me. Let's resolve this, yada, yada, yada. But by doing that, you're at least getting the information out there because you may not know if there's somebody else who booked a load and you just didn't hear it from somebody at RMIS or wherever. In fact, I ran through a situation like this probably about 2 months ago. In November of last year, there was a load of copper that was stolen using a pirated authority, and the scammer booked the load. Like I said, it was a flatbed load of copper, 48,000 pounds. It was supposed to go from Indiana to North Carolina. The scammer then gave the real carrier a fake rate confirmation and told him it was a blind shipment, gave them a new BOL. And instead of it going to North Carolina, it went all the way to Southern California. So when the driver got to Southern California, he finally found out that the load was actually stolen that he had hauled. And when the real broker reached out and made contact with the real carrier shared the address that the load was actually dropped off at. Well, immediately, the police were dispatched and they got there probably about 30 minutes after the load delivered. In that 30 minutes, the load had already been moved. Yes, 48,000 pounds of copper had already been moved. But the good news is that the police were able to get security footage from the building next door, identified the truck that the cargo was loaded onto, and they saw that the driver for that truck was paid in cash. Well, they got a hold of that trucking company, and that trucking company told us, oh, yeah, well, that guy went to this scrapyard 40 miles away. So when the police got to the scrapyard, guess what? There's 48,000 pounds of Gaylords loaded up with copper sitting there in the scrapyard. So we were able to recover. This would not have happened if I had not posted the guy's authority number, his MC number, in Reddit on the Freight Broker subreddit. I posted it out there, and this broker called me the very next morning and said, I've got a problem because I just booked a load with these guys. And at the end of the day, we were able to recover the entire cargo. So it's important that you get that information out there on any kind of social media or internet source that you have access to. The more people that know that your authority has been stolen over a period of time, the better, because then they can finally make contact with you, get the situation resolved, and hopefully recover the cargo that's being stolen. If you have your own company website, get it out on that. Put it in your signature block, in your emails, anywhere. If you've got a presence on that platform, you need to get the information out. Find a broker with carrier 411 access. What's really important about this is that you need to find out if you have a freight guard filed against you. Now, if your authority was only just stolen within the last 24 hours, odds are you're fine. But if it's been a week, you may have freight guards sitting out there and you need to get them addressed. So if you do have freight guards, make sure that you ask for copies of it. If you have a broker friend who can look that up for you. If not, you can reach out to me. I have contacts who can get me freight guard reports. If you need assistance in trying to deal with the freight guards in the situation, of course, we can help. Normally, we do charge a flat fee for freight guard removal, but in these particular circumstances, there's usually a stack of freight guards involved. Instead of doing it for a single flat fee, we're going to work on a consulting basis to be able to knock it out, and that should save you a fair amount of money in those cases. Step 6, make sure you look at your info to determine if there is a risk for a repeat theft. Try to figure out why you were a target for theft in the first place. And is there a different way that you can defend yourselves? Guys, I have to tell you here, and this becomes really critical. I've mentioned this before. If you use a Gmail or Yahoo or other public domain email address, you are a target. You can be impersonated. Your information can be stolen as a result, and you can go through a whole world of trouble. You don't have as much to worry about if you have your own domain email address, private domain. Private domains cost maybe about $20 a year at most. They're not expensive. Get yourself a private domain that fits your company and make sure your email is off of that. It will help in the long run. And it will make you look more professional. Who doesn't want to look professional? Guys, identity theft is a huge problem, whether they're stealing your credit card information or they're stealing your authority. When they steal your authority, they're stealing your business. And you don't need that kind of stuff. Anytime you got a scammer trying to go after you, don't let them take you for a ride. Contact me, the Double Broker Bounty Hunter. Email me at dbbh.hotline@vigilanttransport.com, and I will see to it that we do everything we can to help protect your reputation, your company, and make sure you get paid what you're supposed to get paid. You don't have to do this alone. We're out there to help you. Please also take a look at our new Facebook group, Fighting Transportation Fraud for Carriers, Brokers, Shippers, and Dispatchers. The number for the group is on the bottom of the screen. Please go ahead and subscribe to that group. We keep a lot of good information out there to try to help people deal with issues as they come up. You can also report your issues in there, and you can get some good advice from a lot of the people who are already signed up on that group. This is John Cantera, the Double Broker Bounty Hunter. Good luck. Don't let the scammers take you for a ride. Hit me up if you ever need me.